I'm here today with Jessie Shepard at Blue Clover Therapy, and I'm going to go ahead and just let her give you any contact information you may need to be able to contact her.
So my title, I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and probably the best way to get a hold of us at Blue Clover is to go to our website at www.blueclovertherapy.com.
Okay? And then if people want to contact you, do you have any kind of email, or you just wanted to go straight to the website?
The website has all of our contact information,
perfect.
but they can also call us.
Okay.
Our phone number is 801-206-4321.
Perfect. Okay. And so today we were going to talk about, I'm going to let you explain the topic. We've talked a little bit off camera about what we're going to talk about, but we are going to talk about when to recognize, or how to recognize, signs in your children of trauma, any kind of abuse, or any kind of issues that are going on by their behavior, right?
Yes, and the key to trauma is a single event is different for every single person.
Sure.
So the degree of the event does not determine if the child is traumatized.
Okay.
It's the perception and the emotions and the things that the kid perceives.
Right. So
in that traumatic event.
If something is traumatic to me, it may not be traumatic to you.
Yes.
Like for my own experience, I was really young. I think like Boy Scout, but like, you know, the very first level of Boy Scout over at the neighbors, for example. I have a scar. I got bit by a dog.
Oh, terrible.
I was kind of feeling sick, and so I wasn't really, doing whatever they were doing, whittling wood or whatever. It was at a neighbor's house. And so I was laying on the couch, not feeling good. And their dog came up, and I just said, I went, doggy, tried to pet it. I was really young, like probably, I don't know what the first age for Boy Scouts is. I forget.
Young, it's young.
But I was young.
Yeah.
And the dog just didn't perceive me as like that I should be there. Maybe it was threatened. I don't know. I didn't do anything weird.
Yeah.
But the dog bit me right on the eye.
Oh.
And so, thankfully, that wasn't real traumatic for me. I love dogs. I'm not afraid of dogs. If anything, it taught me how to kind of, approach dogs. But I remember bleeding in the sink and watching the blood go down, and I had to get like stitches.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't cry at all until Mom was there. Of course. Like the whole time I was totally fine. I'm bleeding, but I'm like, it kind of hurts. But I don't know. And then the only time I cried is when my mom was there. She was like, oh, Mom's here. Now I can cry.
Yeah, exactly.
When
You let your
kid.
guard down.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't get traumatized by that. And then I was swimming when I was like, I think 11. And I almost drowned in the municipal pool because I couldn't really swim. But I was, going around the edge, hanging on. My dad was there. But I just knew that I should not panic.
Yeah.
As I was sinking, I was like, oh man, I'm going to the bottom.
Okay,
and my dad got me. So you'd think those two things would have traumatized me.
You would think.
Yeah.
And for some people that might have traumatized them.
Right. And maybe it did when I was littler. But, knowing that it was kind of a fear of mine, I purposely overreacted and became a scuba diver and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah.
So that I wouldn't be freaked out by water. So so things like that, like when you're talking about how it's not really whether the event was actually traumatic in some sort of box. Don't try to put it in a box.
No. Yeah.
If something traumatized somebody, it traumatized somebody.
Exactly.
You need to deal with it, period. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And it can be bullying, it can be very simple things that we feel traumatized with, but it can have huge emotional consequences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So the signs that we're looking for in children, and this goes all the way up into even teenagehood, adulthood, depending on maturity level. The first thing we want to look at is bathroom routine. Okay. So like if your child was potty trained and all of a sudden they start wetting the bed again or don't use the bathroom, that would be a signal wondering what's going on. With all of these things, we want to make sure medically they're okay, that there's not something else going on. But if they've been cleared medically, there's definitely some sort of disturbance going on.
Something's causing it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the night water. Have you ever seen the movie The Power of One?
No, I haven't.
It may be rated R, but it's like one of the best movies of all time. It's like, it's a little English boy in South Africa during like all the apartheid. So the war, English, that was the wrong place to be for a little young English boy with no mom, and
Oh, terrible.
And so he goes through like horrible bullying because it's like Hitler and they're all German. Over in South Africa, and there's like this great divide, racial divide, and so it just goes. That's what the whole movie's about, and it's so the power of one. Like his actions helped so many people.
Oh, I love
and
that.
so he gets bullied and has a really hard life, but then he's just this amazing person.
Yeah, and that's the thing is these traumatic events, they can use them later on. It's making sure that they can cope with it and
what
be
doesn't
able to...
kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
We want it to be a strength, not something that that breaks them down.
But he starts with the night water. I was directly quoting the movie. He gets bullied very badly, not just a little bullying, like really badly in the shower. They turn his like initials into something gross and like just totally bully him, and then he starts wetting the bed. And then he meets a medicine man that helps him get courage and overcome it. And so it's a really good movie.
Oh, I'll have to look it up for sure. Yeah.
But that's what you're talking about when you see that. If you see your children, they're totally fine, they're using the toilet normally, and then all of a sudden they're wetting the bed. Like that doesn't mean they wet the bed. That could maybe they drink a lot of water.
Yeah,
but
it's not a single.
On,
it's not a single symptom. We're looking for multiple ones.
Right, and don't discount it, but at the same time, don't overreact and be like, he wet the bed, he's getting abused. He drank like a liter of Sprite. And then, make sure you know all of the variables, but don't discount something like that happening. Look into it and figure it out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So second, we want to look at their emotional regulation skills. So this is where like medical personnel and therapists are at a kind of a downfall a little bit because we will only see the client
when they come in.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And so that might be the very first time that we see them. And so that's where the caretaker really has their superpower in this.
Sure.
Because they know if our emotions more roller coastery than normal.
Have they been acting strange? Or are they getting angry and irritated when they normally wouldn't be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
You can usually tell when something's wrong with somebody, even if they're trying to mask it, even if they're trying to not let you know. There's ways to tell, like, you don't really seem like yourself there.
Yeah, especially, if it's your kids and you kind of have a rough idea of what their personality is. So, so that's a big red flag there.
Right. So that's one thing to look for. Okay.
Yeah. Vocalization. So this can go either way. So it can either be where they're like shouting and like you're saying, anger is a big one, or it goes the other way where they have selective mutism.
Okay.
So where they maybe they don't talk at school.
Shut down about it.
Yeah, and you cannot get them to talk.
Right.
And the key with that is to not try to force them to talk.
Right.
Because there is a reason why it's happening.
Sure.
Again, medical personnel, we want to make sure everything's fine.
Sure.
But there might be something huge going on.
Okay.
Depending on where they're, staying mute, what times of day, things like that.
And if it's happening all the time, that when something happens that upsets a child and they're always quiet, then they're not really processing it and getting over it, right? They're just kind of shutting down.
Yeah, it's usually it's a disassociation. So they're shutting down kind of parts of their brain and not wanting to. Now that doesn't mean that they're still thinking about it, but that it does mean that they just don't want to outwardly talk about it or deal with that. Okay,
so you're saying learn how to know the difference between giving the child some time to deal with something. Don't try to force them to come out and talk about it. But at the same time, don't let it become a habit and a normal thing to just completely not deal with something they don't want to deal with, because that's also bad.
Well, and that's just it. We don't want to force them. We're not like, you need to talk and process this, because nobody has ever benefited from that.
Right.
But
you must talk to me.
Yeah, please.
No.
But you can do art. You can take them to a therapist and say, hey, we are mute at school. We need to figure this out because we need to process. So kind of moving that way is kind of what we're looking for there.
Okay.
Questions. Kids are very inquisitive.
Sure.
And so if they ask a lot of questions about death, pain, if you're going to leave, if, all
and
of
they're thinking about those things.
Yeah, and if it's, like, kids will ask, like, are you going to work? Where are you going? What are you doing? Those kind of things are normal.
Are you going to come home again?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I live here.
Of course.
Yeah.
But but it's a whole nother if they're asking about, well, do people die in car accidents? Or, what does it feel like?
If they're always focused on death.
Yeah, exactly. If they're really focused on that, or if there's very specific questions about body parts or those kind of things. We want to...
Then that can tip you off maybe something sexual or horrible is going on.
Yeah,
like
and
really icky stuff,
Yeah, exactly. So we just want to...
Because most, 3 and 4 year olds don't really know what to call those parts.
Yeah, and...
You're gonna know if they've had, like, how would they know that?
That's really interesting.
They don't teach that in,
in
Sunday school or,
Yeah, exactly. So, so we want to kind of ask questions about, so what made you think of that? Or what brought that up?
Maybe wonder if they're what kind of TV they're watching, or if they got on the iPad and went to YouTube and saw something that they just don't understand.
We have to bring down the parental controls, kind of thing. But yeah, so even as simple as that, but just figuring out where they got their questions from.
Sure.
Anger. You were talking about anger
Mm-hmm.
before. So kids have a very limited amount of ways of expressing how they feel. And anger is a relatively easy one to go to because you can just outwardly, kind of thing.
If your kid's constantly, have to deal with everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or let's say they're going to school and they are just mean.
Chucking stuff, pushing kids. Yeah.
You're like, what is happening
This
here?
kid doesn't do that when he's around other kids at home.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to look into that as well. Play behaviors.
Okay.
So kids process and learn through play. That's why we want them to have outside time and all those wonderful things that we talked about. So if they are rerunning a situation over and over in their play behaviors, you're going to want to question why that is. So let's say you were in a car accident, right? And they keep replaying with their little trucks, and crash, and then everybody dies or something. You're like, okay, wait a minute. What is going on? If it's distressing for the kiddo, then we need to figure out what's going on. Sometimes they like to replay to figure out what in the world happened there.
Right.
But so we want to look at those repetitive play behaviors.
Okay.
In that way. Memory is an important one. So if they have distortions of memory, when we experience something that's traumatizing, parts of our brain shut down. Okay. And so when we go into fight, flight, freeze, that's all we think about. There's
one of those 3 F's is going to happen. Fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
Okay.
And so,
because people you always hear about fight and flight.
Yes.
But you don't really hear about the freeze.
Yeah, and that one is just as important as the other two. Because sometimes we'll just...
If it's an actual situation of danger, like you need to get out of there and move.
Yes.
You don't want to freeze up.
You don't want to freeze up, but that might just be your brain reacting that way.
Right. There's a TV show that's it's like British comedy.
And
they think that there's like a bomb. It's like a robot bomb. And the one guy I can't move. He literally, he just is so petrified. He can't move.
Yeah.
And the other guy, he's talking to the other guy, and he's like, why are you still here? He's like, oh yeah, I can totally go away. See ya. And he runs.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so
that's a good example of the freeze part. People are just petrified.
Yeah. And so with that, memory systems shut down. And so they might not remember an event at all, or they might remember certain events, or just like, let's say they had to ride in an ambulance. They might not remember the ambulance part, but they might remember the gloves they wore.
Right.
You see what I'm
saying?
Kids
get the white coat syndrome sometimes when they go to the doctor, because the last time I was here, the scary doctor gave me a shot and it really hurt.
Yes.
My kid went through, kids, when they're really young, they'll go through that. They're totally fine. They can get a shot, and then they see, the doctor in the white coat, and they're like, it's it terrifies them. And you're like, it's your white coat, he's got the white coat syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
So that stuff happens. And then you either, this is a nice guy, and if it hurts,
here's a sticker.
You're sick. When you take your medicine, it doesn't taste very good, but it's good for you. Then they, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we want to figure out if they're having memory distortions or forgetting things a lot. We need to figure that out.
Okay.
Concentration. So when they go to school, if let's say they cannot sit still, they can't sit in their seat, they're not paying attention, all of that. Now, we go right to ADHD because we're like...
Everybody thinks...
Yeah, let's get them...
That kid's active, so get him Adderall.
Let's figure out what's going on.
Right?
Let's, go to a doctor.
Ritalin,
But it can be where they have a lot of thoughts going through their brain, and they actually can't focus on what's going on.
Sure.
So that's why it's important to figure out if it's ADHD or if there's something traumatizing or something.
Sure, and the one thing to mention, I think we should probably just quickly mention, with ADHD, sometimes people think that it's they can't, their brain can't function, or they're not smart enough, or they're lazy. Those things are wrong. It's that they are, it's like you say, there's so much going on that it's harder for them to do the blinders and go to one thing.
Yes.
They're used to doing 2 and 3 things. And I think there's, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a book called Driven to Distraction. I haven't read the book, but from the title, I want to think that it's kind of like the author's way. Maybe he has ADD. Is it a man? And so he's kind of saying some distraction for people with ADD might be okay, but when it gets to the point that they aren't functioning, it's bad.
Yes.
So some people can do some multitasking, and it's actually positive. But when you get to the point where multitasking makes you not be able to focus 100% on what you're doing, if you're doing 2 things at a time, then it's bad. Multitasking is bad.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to think multitasking is great.
Yeah.
Because you can get more done.
right?
But if you're getting more done wrong, then it's not good.
Yeah. Well, and with ADHD, folks with ADHD actually do really well in business.
Sure.
You know, being lawyers, therapists, all of that, because you have to be like energetic and ready to
you're
roll.
Multifaceted.
And paying attention to every aspect. And folks with ADHD actually are amazingly smart because they see everything.
Sure. They're kind of catching everything.
Yeah.
At, more than 60%, but not like focusing on one thing 100%.
Yeah. So it's really helping them figure out how to kind of be able to focus, like
turn it into a superpower versus a disability.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Like when my kiddos, because they all have ADD, but
I think
when they do
honestly,
homework,
this is going to be weird, and I'm not a therapist. I'm not trying to throw out some theory, but I honestly think like ADD and ADHD, they're more of evolution because just look at the world. Everything is more fast paced.
Well,
it's almost like you can't, if you aren't a little that way, you're like you almost can't function because everything's so fast.
Well, and all it is is figuring out how to cope with it.
Sure.
So like if you give a kid like a toy to play with while they do their homework, usually they can do it perfectly fine. Yeah. It's just figuring out how to cope with it.
Right.
So
they say memory is linked to food and smell. And so when I would take tests and try to memorize things, I'd try to eat the same food.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
Just so that, I'm going to have my food before my test. And just to see if it would work, and it actually kind of works.
I did kind of the same thing. I would use lavender.
Yeah, or like maybe eat an orange every time you study.
Yeah, so you can kind of
tap into the farther part of your brain. There.
Yeah, exactly. Try to keep it in there longer. Sure. That's the worst part, but... Yeah,
is that lavender that's going right now?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
excellent. And the purple lavender
you
jacket.
Can quiz me all you want, right?
That's great.
The next thing that sometimes people are uncomfortable with is sexual behaviors.
Okay.
So with kids in general are not. So they're not sexual, but they have.
It's just not there yet.
It's not there until we hit puberty. Things don't start.
That stuff is the clockwork isn't even going.
Yeah, but they do get endorphins from sexual parts and things for those type of things. Sure. And so they start kind of experimenting and figuring out what their body's all about and whatnot.
And they may be curious.
Yeah, that's totally normal. We're totally good with that. Yeah. But when we start seeing where they're wanting to touch other people's body parts, or they are doing anything that's just generally uncomfortable or socially awkward, we want to observe that and
even
kind
if they're like even if the potty break signal for boys, I have all boys, so I'm going to be well versed in boys and not so much in girls, but boys will do either the potty dance or the hand maneuver and you're like, you have to go to the bathroom?
Do you have to go to the bathroom?
Because I know your hand's like,
you're telling me you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, like, go to the bathroom.
Yeah, so, and that's normal. That's totally normal.
Sure.
But when we get into the other sexual behaviors, then we start questioning what's going on. And our mind goes right to sexual abuse, which can be, but it can also be where they have experienced something traumatic, they are uncomfortable with themselves inside.
Or their body part, sure.
Yeah, and they're trying to get that endorphin rush.
Okay.
Because with any type of sexual arousal or any of that kind of experimentation, you do release endorphins.
Okay.
And so it can be a way of coping as well.
Okay.
Kind of the same way
And so if they've experienced something like that and they're doing something like that, then it's because they want that same feeling?
Well, okay, so there's two different things.
That's a tip. That's a sign you're saying.
Yeah, so it can be that there was some sort of a sexual
that
abuse.
happened.
Yeah.
Sure.
So and we want to explore that thoroughly.
Sure.
But then it can be where they're trying to just release endorphins. So kind of like how we jump out of planes or go rock climbing, all that kind of stuff. Kids can't do that. Sure. So you release endorphins in different ways, and so sexual behaviors, as long as they're age appropriate, can be part of that endorphin rush.
Okay.
Gotcha. So that's something to note there.
That's something new to me. That's why I didn't quite understand it. Sorry if I had to...
no, you're good. And that's just it, it's a lot of times when folks come in and talk with me, they're like, oh, he's been sexually abused, I know it. And it's like, well, wait a minute, we need to figure out exactly what's going on, because it can be several different things. Yeah. We don't have to run right to sexual abuse.
Sure.
So, of course, we take
Did you know?
Yeah. So we, of course, want to make sure that the kid is safe and all of that. But, so that's kind of where that comes from. And then the last red flag that we look for is physical symptoms.
Okay.
So you have kids, I have kids. They both, if they don't want to go to school, all of a sudden they have a tummy ache.
Sure.
And
you're like, I'm not getting a fever.
Yeah.
Doc says you're okay.
You haven't thrown up. I don't know.
What's really going on? Yeah.
Yeah. So there are times where kids fake physical symptoms, and that's just the fact of life. As a parent, you know that.
I know adults that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm so ill. I have to stay at home.
You're like, really?
Are you?
Really? Yeah. So for 3 months, everything was okay, and now that this deadline's here,
exactly.
I see. Sure.
Interesting.
I am also ill.
We are all ill. We will be gone.
Right. In fact, I don't even want to talk anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Please.
Exactly. Well, and so, but physical symptoms can actually be real in these type of situations where if they go to school, they start thinking about it, their stomach gets all tight, they get a tummy ache.
You get nervous, you get the butterflies. And,
exactly. Or where to the point where they actually vomit. They actually have issues that way. And so
isn't that I don't know if that's how ulcers are linked, but I mean if you're always stressing out.
Oh yeah, your stomach wraps around itself, and we start. I mean, that's an oversimplification of it. But ulcers start developing, and then it makes it worse the next time that you're stressed out.
Sure. And stress isn't the direct cause of it, but stress can do a lot of things too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it kills pets like fish.
Yeah.
They get fish of all things.
Yeah.
People think fish really don't have feelings or emotion.
But
if fish get stressed,
yeah, it's dead. It's done.
They're done. They're floating, and you're like,
what happened?
The water was fine. The pH balance,
Like, what do I do?
The cat trying to kill it all the time might have made it.
Probably did it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and so we want to again medical personnel, because if they do have ulcers, we want medications to assist with that, because it can bleed and all of that.
And get that stress under control so that it's not going to cause that.
Absolutely. Sure. Well, and then we want to figure out what is going on to cause those different somatic type symptoms, and really getting underneath everything.
I think stress management is huge. I mean, that sounds like another video if you ever wanted to do another video.
Absolutely.
Stress management, I mean, everybody needs stress management.
Yes.
I mean, you need to learn how to go to your happy place when you're like, just, whoa. Yeah. I mean, if you're driving, especially like winter driving,
Yes, which has been terrible
seasonally
lately.
Appropriate right now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if that's the worst thing to do, panic, hit your brake. That's what everybody does. Like, I'm not going that fast, but everybody's stopping because something happened, and now I got to stop faster.
Yeah.
It's better to pump those brakes. Yeah. To try to steer clear of it.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do when it's like ice is hit your brake and because you're just gonna go
Yeah, exactly.
right into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's figuring out. Everybody has something to cope with. Not a single one of us is just like, I'm just gonna skip through life.
Sure.
It doesn't work like that. So it's figuring out those coping skills so they don't have to deal with those stuff. And
they're always gonna look to adults. They're gonna look to their parents. I mean, a lot of parents recognize that that's the role that they have. And like for me, when my first boy was born, I mean, I kind of, I liked life, thought everything was good, took things serious, but knew how to have fun.
Yeah.
And then, the second my child was born, it was C-section, and so it was so surreal. I can remember it like it just happened, because it just really was vivid. And as they were, they had to use the forceps things to bring him out because they had to kind of get him out.
Yeah.
And he was, like a little bluish, but like all the health signs were like totally normal. And so, but I just remember thinking, I had we talked a little bit about cats actually. I can't even remember how that came up. But I toilet trained cats, and I
know you were telling me like this is awesome.
Well, it's because I have asthma and stuff, and so I can't really clean their box because the pneumonia from the urine and the dust would make me just really sick, and their dander when they lick themselves. So I'd have them really well, maintained. They'd take a lot of baths. They don't really like to make them still enjoy getting clean.
Yeah.
They usually clean themselves with their tongues and stuff.
Yeah.
They got the prickly tongue like a brush, so it's good for their hair too. But basically, with a cat that's even, if you've got a cat that's toilet trained, I always kind of like thought of them as my kids before I had kids.
Yeah.
And so, you hear parents like, well, you don't have kids. And that used to kind of burn me because I'd be like, I've got cats that are toilet trained and I treat them just like a kid.
No big deal. Is your kid toilet trained?
Yeah, and I really thought that was like a legitimate argument until I had a child. And then I was like, man, in fact, that was the first thing I said to my wife at the time when my boy was born. I was just like, because this had just happened. That argument just happened like over the internet or something with somebody. And as soon as I was standing there, the first thing I said to her was, baby, we have cats. Like, they're just cats. Like, this is huge,
Yeah.
And so it was just, your life changes in a split second. You just go, whoa, you just know it's for real.
Yeah.
This person, this tiny, perfect little life depends on me for everything.
Yeah.
And it's like a huge responsibility, but at the same time, it's such an amazing thing. You're like, but you're floored with it. I mean, if you aren't floored with it, you got to check yourself and ask why you're not floored with it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and so you just, I think that's something that good parents will recognize. You know, like you're that important to your kids. You are the superhero.
Yep.
People can talk about Batman and Superman, and they're great.
Of course,
and Batman's
we have to have them.
Yeah, and Batman's just a guy in a costume.
Yep.
But he's a really determined, very smart, very, he just has sheer force of will and a lot of cool gadgets, and it helps that he's like a millionaire kid.
Of course, that doesn't hurt,
right? So he can get all those gadgets, but he's just a guy in a cool costume. But he's a hero because of his actions and because of what he does.
Yep.
And that's the same for for parents. You're literally everything you do. Kids are like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to grow up like daddy. I'm going to be big like daddy.
Yep.
You are a superhero to them. You're like the original superhero to them.
Yep.
And so, it's good when parents recognize that and see that. They know how important their role is.
Yes.
And other adults have the same thing because they're young, they're exploring, they don't know things, they're going to look up to people. They're going to have those role models. So, when people recognize that, you got to take on that responsibility.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
This has been great. I love this office and the aromatherapy.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like I've already had some therapy just by the lavender aromatherapy.
Well, thank you for coming in. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so if you want to give your contact information, I'd love to do a follow-up with you if you ever want to. Let me know. And again, this is Jessie Shepard.
Yep. At
Blue Clover Therapy. And go ahead and the website was?
So it's www.blueclovertherapy.com. And our phone number is 801-206-4321.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.